Imagine a mother so ruthless that she orders the death of her own grandchildren, a mother who shockingly feeds on her own child, and another who views her child as so disposable that she attempts to swap him for another woman's child. Such were the acts that the worst mothers in the Bible were capable of. The Bible records the stories of certain women who were poor examples of mothers. Without a doubt, the worst mothers in the Bible failed their children terribly. In many cases, their failures also influenced their children to become morally corrupt individuals. We can find poor examples of mothers in the Bible in both the Old and the New Testaments, from the simplest to the most sinister cases. Even pious individuals like Rebecca could set bad examples as mothers. Rebecca was a God-fearing woman, but she made a grave mistake by showing favoritism to one of her sons. This favoritism divided her household for a long time, to the extent that one son desired to kill the other. Consequently, Rebecca had to deal with the suffering of watching her favorite son Jacob leave home to avoid being killed by his brother Esau. Rebecca never saw him again. However, Rebecca is obviously not on the list of the worst mothers in the Bible, although her behavior was a bad example as a mother. Another bad example of a mother recorded in the Bible, much worse than Rebecca, is the example of Herodias. Herodias, a woman who descended from King Herod, left her husband to have a relationship with her brother-in-law, Herod Antipas. When this immoral relationship was denounced by the prophet John the Baptist, as recorded in the Bible, Herodias sought to destroy him at any cost. Herodias satisfied her feelings of revenge by manipulating her own daughter. She orchestrated a situation where her daughter danced seductively for Herod Antipas, and in return secured a promise from him that the head of the prophet John the Baptist would be delivered to her on a platter that very night. Given such a horrifying story, you might wonder if things could possibly get any worse. Indeed, they can. We will now delve into the stories of the three worst mothers in the Bible. The first bad example of motherhood on our list of the three worst mothers in the Bible is the story of an anonymous woman who lived during the early reign of King Solomon. According to the biblical text in the first book of Kings, chapter 3, two prostitute women were living together and both gave birth around the same time, with a mere 3 days apart. One night, one of these women accidentally smothered her own child by laying on him. However, what makes this woman one of the worst mothers in the Bible was her subsequent actions. Instead of mourning her lost child, this woman rose stealthily during the night, took her housemate's child as her own, and replaced him with the body of her deceased son. In essence, she simply swapped her child as if he were a broken, worthless object. In the morning, when the other mother rose to breastfeed her child, she found the boy dead. Naturally, she realized that the dead child was not her own, but that of the woman she shared a home with. The ensuing dispute over the identity of the living child's true mother reached King Solomon. Standing before the king, both women claimed the boy as their own. In his wisdom, Solomon proposed to cut the living child in half with a sword, so each woman could have a piece. Faced with this seemingly absurd proposal, the true mother quickly renounced her claim to the child, as she preferred to see him alive with the other woman rather than dead. In contrast, the false mother, in her utter selfishness, agreed to the division of the child as she wanted the true mother to also lose her son. Upon seeing the reactions of the two women, Solomon made his decision and returned the child to his true mother. It's unknown what became of the false mother. We don't know whether she later regretted her actions or if she had any more children. All we know is that, through an unfortunate turn of events, she did not have the opportunity to raise her own child. Her behavior, however, makes us question what kind of mother she would have been to that boy. The second example on our list of the worst mothers in the Bible is another anonymous woman who lived in Samaria. As documented in the second book of Kings, chapter 6, her story took place during the reign of King Joram of Israel, son of Ahab and Jezebel. During this period, the city of Samaria was under siege by the king of Syria. This resulted in a terrible famine, causing the inhabitants to resort to extreme measures to survive. Within this grim context, the Bible tells of two women who struck a sinister agreement. They decided that they would kill and eat one woman's son, and the next day they would do the same with the other woman's son. The first mother fulfilled her part of the pact, killing and cooking her own child for sustenance. However, when it was time for the other mother to fulfill her part of the agreement, she refused to kill her son. Feeling wronged, the mother who had consumed her own child sought justice from King Joram. Shocked by the situation, the king tore his clothes and blamed the prophet Elisha for the people's suffering. The situation in Samaria was indeed dire at that time. The crisis had escalated to such an extent that a donkey's head, an undesirable part of an animal deemed unclean by Mosaic law, was being sold for a kilo of silver. Nevertheless, that mother committed the unthinkable. No matter how dire the situation, a mother is generally expected to sacrifice her own life to save her child's, not the other way around. Additionally, the other woman who refused to fulfill the agreed-upon pact by giving up her son also failed to display a refined maternal instinct, as she was part of the dreadful agreement and likewise consumed the boy who was killed. All that suffering was not the fault of the prophet Elisha, but rather a consequence of the Israelites' sins. They had broken the covenant with the Lord and had been deeply corrupted by idolatry since the times of Ahab and Jezebel. Speaking of Jezebel brings us to the third example of the worst mothers in the Bible. Despite her wickedness, it is not Jezebel but her daughter, Athaliah. Undoubtedly, the evil that Athaliah became was greatly influenced by her wicked mother, Jezebel, who could have easily been included in this list. But Athaliah took her mother's wickedness to an even higher level. When Athaliah married Jehoram, the son of King Jehoshaphat, she introduced her parents' idolatry into the kingdom of Judah. She even managed to influence her husband to kill his own brothers. Later, when her son Ahaziah was the only survivor of their house following the death of his father and brothers, he ascended the throne of Judah under the strong influence of his wicked mother, Athaliah. However, his reign was short-lived, as he was killed after about a year. Athaliah then exploited the situation to usurp the throne of Jerusalem. It's in this context we can understand why she was such a detestable matriarch to her family. There's a popular saying that a grandmother is twice a mother, but this was not the case with Athaliah. All her children were dead, and the only remaining members of her family were her grandchildren. Yet, in a completely mad act, Athaliah ordered the murder of her own grandchildren with the intent of exterminating the lineage of David and maintaining power. Fortunately, one of her grandsons, who was only a year old at the time, was saved by his aunt and managed to escape the massacre. The boy lived in hiding in the temple for 6 years until he was proclaimed king at the age of 7 in a revolt led by the priesthood of Jerusalem against Athaliah. In light of these atrocities, one may question why the Bible includes such stories. The truth is that the Bible does not hide the mistakes and failures of its characters, providing us with an opportunity to recognize our dependence on God's grace in our lives. People can do the most disturbing things when they stray from the Lord, even against those they should love and protect. These sad examples underscore the importance of divine guidance to prevent us from making tragic and immoral decisions that may contravene the Lord's precepts and harm our families. Do you agree with our selection of the worst mothers in the Bible, or are there others that you think should be included? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more biblical stories.